I'd like to welcome you to the WOW Empress Codes intentional journal readings, and where it's all about really aligning with your true dominion destiny for this current phase. And it's all about unlocking your life codes for you to discover how to move forward in this powerful now. Now, my motto is that your new now destiny codes aren't found in the stars and they aren't found in the cards, but they are found in the life codes. And I always preface these sessions by sharing that you can really start to decode and actually recode your life to create your highest levels of divine destiny trajectory using the simple practice of intentional journaling. And what intentional journaling does, this process provides sort of prompts and triggers for you to extract really your divine encoding to bring forth your own information. And that's what you really want to do, have your own new data. And this is really about your true life's design for this phase. And I am the WOW Empress AliNICOLE WOW. And today I am both excited and delighted to once again have my STAR Queen Celebrity-preneur Protégé, Gina Gardiner, and she is joining me for this intentional journal reading intensive, because we're going to be doing an intensive here, and we're going to feature several of our individual and collective co-authored intentional journal style publications, and we're going to see which ones are going to come up for us to do reading from today. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this session will bring forth and what the next levels will be for really unlocking divine destiny codes. So Gina, thank you so much once again for being here with me for this experience. And I'm so glad that we are able to bring this type of experience to the public for them to benefit.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm really excited to see where this session goes.
Oh, I am too. And doing an intensive of this nature is certainly unique. You and I have done several intensives together in workspace, formats and everything, but this is actually something a little different that we are doing in terms of showcasing several areas in terms of the journals. So this is going to be really exciting. And so I really am excited about this. So let's take a moment and be present really with the space, and then we'll be present with the journals and see if any insight comes up, kind of for a core focus. So I'm going to just invite this space, this sacred space, for us to do some deep breathing. So let's take about 3 deep breaths. Okay. So Gina, actually something that is coming up in the moment is more about the expanded version of the higher self. And so that's something that's sort of come up, and whether that is a core consistent theme that will be throughout this intensive, so to speak, but that's what's coming up now. So before we start getting really present with the journals and seeing which ones are going to come up and we actually start featuring, would you like to speak anything to that in terms of this expanded version of the higher self, or the truer self that wants to come forth?
I think certainly from my own experience and from working with other people, one of the things that I've recognized is that we all play small. I mean, much earlier on in our association, you introduced me to the concept of the fishbowl. Mm-hmm. People are swimming around in the fishbowl and they think that the fishbowl is their world. That's their perspective. And when they expand, most people think about going into the equivalent of a fish tank. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that initially the expanded view was that you would jump into the ocean. Right. But in more recent times, in fact, very recently, what I recognize is that when you truly do allow yourself to be who you truly are, it's not about being part of the ocean. It's about being on the edge of the universe and the
Mm-hmm.
universe of universes, that
Mm-hmm.
the opportunities are actually quite limitless. And I
Mm-hmm.
know many people who are listening to that will think, that's just silly, that's just too big, too much to ask. But what I would say to you is, that's old conditioning and limiting
Right.
beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And that when you step into your new coding, that
Mm-hmm.
anything is possible. So allow yourself to let those fetters go, and
Mm-hmm.
to give yourself up wholeheartedly. And that's one of the reasons why intentional journaling is so helpful,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no form to it other than that which you choose to use.
Yes. Oh, that was brilliant. Yes. I loved everything you shared, and going beyond and continuously being at the edge of yourself and going beyond the edge. That's the expansion, and understanding that there are these different dimensions to who we are. And when we can allow ourselves to be in these different dimensions and allow the life codes and mission and purpose codes to unlock on those different levels, then that's where the expansiveness continues. And that is really the higher self context, not the higher self in terms of what most are conditioned to learning, because that's really kind of a linear framework, hierarchy framework.
Yeah.
This is more expansive, where the higher self is wide and high. It's not just going up in some, latitudinal way. It's
Yeah.
longitudinal and it's latitudinal. And something that you brought up in terms of what I used to bring up in terms of the metaphor or the analogy in terms of the fishbowl and individuals jumping from one fishbowl normally into another fishbowl or into an aquarium and ultimately not getting into the ocean. But what happens is that, again, the ocean too provides a limitation. And that's why, as you mentioned about expanding universe beyond universe and being at the edge and going beyond that, what the ocean represents is a mindset. It's oceanic consciousness. And that's what we need to embody to be in flow and to be in sync with life. We get our expansiveness, if you will, in the ocean context, more like what Rumi talks about when he says that, you are not just a drop in the ocean, but you are an ocean, within the drop within yourself. And so really it is the embodiment of that oceanic expression that then allows you to then expand into the different dimensions and context of you so that you can become unformed. And so when you think about Bruce Lee, which is one of my, favorite ones to quote, and I do embody his concept around the be water. And as you know, in different dimensions of my branding, the water context is, that element is used. Not just for that, that's a component of it. Mine's a little bit more expansive story, but we have to learn how to be fluid, be water, be in flow, and take on the shape and the embodiment of that which we allow ourselves to be containerized in for the higher expression. So an example of that is just like how within Bruce Lee's quote, when he talks about if you pour water into a glass or so, the water takes on the embodiment and shape of that, of the glass.
Yeah.
And so when we allow ourselves, yeah, exactly, perfect, right? Perfect, that's right. And so whatever you allow yourself to be poured into is what you begin to take on as a container, even if it's for that moment. So that's why you want to be very mindful in terms of how you allow yourself to be containerized, in the sense as you are ascending and expanding at the same time in being this higher self format. So again, that is not the higher self just in a linear context going in level, up and up and up. No, it's the longitude and latitudinal approach. But again, going back to being like water in our essence allows them, when you are in more of the universal expansion in terms of the different dimensions of yourself, you can be in flow and you can take on the shape of that trajectory, because that's just a dimension of who you are, and then allow yourself to come unformed and be able to flow into the next stream of what that is. So whether you are a pond at the time, you are a lake, you are a river, you are the ocean, you are a waterfall, you are a tsunami, you're a block of ice, whatever the form is, allow yourself to take form and to change form and to be in these different dimensions of who you are. And so, with that, today, and what we're going to be bringing forth in terms of the intentional journaling intensive, we're going to be in flow and allow the embodiment of this experience to be the guidance in which we facilitate. And that's why we come to you today with knowing we're here to bring forth this intensive, but we don't have a planned format or anything. It is really being in the space and taking on the embodiment. And as I even said to Gina initially, is that this is what's coming up now, but we don't know that that's going to be the context for this whole intensive. So, but we're being present so that the wisdom and the insights and the information comes through at this time. But we can also allow this to take another shape and form as we are here, in this in this experience. So yeah, so Gina.
Can I just add to?
Yes, please.
One of the things that has really struck me through the whole process is how we use language, and we have very, very small containers in terms of meaning that we have, and that each of us has our own definition, and we often, even if it's the simplest form, other people using the same words, we make the assumption that they mean the same as us. What I would urge you, if you're watching or listening to this, is to just while you're listening to this, just suspend your old definition of the language, because that can keep you playing small, and really just lift the lid off and be open to the possibility that the way in which you have used language in the past is not wrong, but how we are using it is very different.
Yes.
And allow that to expand in, just like the water, to shape shift into what it needs to be. But if you use the language like expand, like higher purpose or whatever, you're going to limit yourself, and that would be a shame.
Right. Thank you so much for reiterating that, because that was, initially too, what I was mentioning about the context, how we learn about the higher self. And it is in this very ascended format in terms of leveling up or so, but this is expansiveness, and it really does have to be kind of a disruptive experience. And that's what you were basically saying too, is that, as this is going along, allow the different language, because the language is dimensional as well. I use a lot of terms that can be tailored to some of what would be considered some of the spiritual enlightenment on a certain level, or some of the new age context or so. And actually, when I'm communicating it, it is none of that vibration at all. But the languaging in terms of the dimension I'm communicating it from is very different. And so you do have to be present with that. And that is part of the expansiveness, exactly what Gina was speaking of, is that you have to be able to do that suspension for the moment, at least, so that this space opens up enough to introduce a newer context to that language. And so getting into unlocking the different codes, around this that are going to be very unique to you. And you'll be able to hear these different contexts in your own understanding. It is more like, if you're familiar within the Bible, the day of Pentecost, where the apostles were sharing the gospel, and they were sharing it in different languages, in unknown tongues to them. But somehow, as they were speaking, everyone was hearing in their own language, in a miraculous way. And so that's kind of how you have to allow this process to be too, is that the dimension and context of the language will hit you the way that it needs to resonate at that time. But being present, just as Gina mentioned and stated so magnificently, but you do have to suspend in thought, at least for the moment, the context around which you are familiar with the language, so that ultimately it can shape shift into what it needs to be. So you don't have to overthink this or anything. It just is more of an awareness that she's bringing up. Is just be aware so that you aren't limited to your greater expansion, that's ensuing, at this moment. So with that being said, Gina, thank you so much for bringing that up, and we could expound upon that even more.
Well, ultimately, your language is just a reflection of your thinking. And we are, if you always do what you've always done, if you always think what you've always thought, then you're going to continue to have the same. So now is the time to open up the possibilities. Give yourself permission to look through different set of glasses.
Yes.
To open the door. And if you open the door, it's easy to push against it. If the door is locked to the possibility of you discovering a new way of being, then you're not going to get so much value out of this. But to get the most value, just be aware of where your parameters have historically been. Push the door, allow those to expand, give yourself that permission, and you will find that you get so much more value out of the session.
Absolutely. And that was, once again, magnificently stated. It is all about being able to maximize this experience and get the most value out of it. And that is going to depend on you and how you're present with it and how you're allowing this process, to be. So, on that note, let's expand, within the context of this intensive, and start being present with the journals. But what we'll do first is that Gina is going to show you different sets of the journals. They're in categories. And again, as I mentioned earlier, some of them they're individual, and then some are collective works, that we've done together. But she's got a number of them, several of them, and they are in piles or categories. And so she's going to feature what we have, but we're not going to read or even be guided to use, all of those, but we are just showing you what we have today and what we will be being present with. So Gina, however you feel guided to start with showing the different sets first, we'll show them all, and then we will ultimately be present and see which ones are going to come up in terms of where we need to start during this time. So yes.
Actually, not the whole set, but just one particular one that springs to mind is the taking the bullshit out of leadership, and whether that's leadership of others or leadership of yourself. I think that's a really good place to start, because ultimately that's what we've been talking about, by not limiting yourself, because so often it's the BS in us that limits us. So
yes, that is true. Okay.
Suggesting that's a good
okay, so we can start with that, but what we'll do is we're just going to feature all of them first, and then we will start doing kind of the individual. But I'm glad you put that aside, because that's a lead. So you go ahead and show all of what we have in the categories, and then we'll come back and let that be sort of a jump start.
Okay, so the first set I'm going to show is the enlightened leadership set, which starts off with enlightened emerging leaders, authentic leaders, profitable leaders, and enlightened limitless leaders. And those look at different dimensions of enlightened leadership. So that's the first set.
Okay, great.
Moving on, in terms of profitability, there are a number of journals around how you can, the awareness, the comprehension, and the actions and how to be around profitability. So there's a journey into the new era of profitable enlightened leadership, creating profits from the inside out, the profitable enlightened leader's journey, and then discovering levels of financial power the right way. And if you look at all of these sets, those are a practical embodiment of what we mean by creating profitability the right way, WRITE, and
Yes,
you have a
indeed.
number of journals that fit into to that category. Then we have the empaths. These aren't in the order that they were written, but they are in the order, the logical order that you might use them, which is, are you an empath, discovering your true identity and purpose, harnessing your power as an empath, stepping into your genuine power as an empath, and then accelerating your empathic journey, your empathic potential, and then sharing your empathic journey the right way. And
let me get you to bring that one back up and move it more to the center so we can see.
You have to do everything opposite.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we can see those. Okay, yeah, sharing your empathic journey.
And then you have we have a shared one, which is harnessing your empathic profitable phoenixpreneur power. It's your book, but I wrote the forward to that. And then Red Root Riches for empathic entrepreneurs, and that's one of yours. I've only got a tiny sample of the very, very many that you have created. The next group are yours. Do you want me to stick to mine?
No, however they're coming up to you.
Right, so these are a powerful little group. They might look little books, but they pack a punch. One which I found incredibly valuable is A New Fresh Start with God. And that really has helped me develop a greater awareness spiritually. The Well of Transformation, an inspirational journal for accessing your inner wellspring of living water. Water to Wine, a miracles journal guide for creating conscious communion with the vineyards of life. And Him Possible. And those, for me, those are journals that I use. And whilst they have lots of possibilities, for me, that they're what I'd call my spiritual group. I don't know what you'd call them, but
yeah, that's great. We'll call them that today, actually, too. We'll address that as the spiritual group. Yeah.
So that's for me on those days when I'm journaling, that I want to really tune into my own spirituality and my journey there.
Perfect.
The next group are all about health and well-being, and a very close good friend was fighting cancer, and so started to use those for her and with her. So these are AliNICOLE's, Your Inner Healing Pool. Oh, I'm not very good at doing opposite. So that's that one.
Yes.
Returning to Wellness. And wellness is a state of mind. And then my friend Vicky and we created a journal together, and it's called Your Life in Their Hands, Where Does the Responsibility Lie? And that was exploring the partnership between you and your doctor and the relationship you have with yourself. And that came out of off the back of the work that AliNICOLE and Vicky and AliNICOLE and I did all around, really giving yourself the very best opportunity for health and vitality. And so that last one shares a little of Vicky's and my health journey and looks at the relationship that you have. Are you just going to be a victim to whatever happens with the doctors? Or are you going to take control of your wellness? And actually, you need to be doing that long before you get to see the doctor. It's not about when it's about an approach to life. So that for me is that's the wellness set, if you like.
Yes.
And then there is a bit of a mixture. So I talked about the bullshit one.
Yes.
We live in a time where life for many people is dark, very challenging. And so this is a book for not only for leaders, but for people in general, it's time to become a beacon of light and hope.
Yes.
It's so important that we look to the light and that we have hope for the future, rather than focusing so much on the darkness. And so many people, I know we've spoken about this many times, I am concerned about how many people have turned away from the light and are living from a place of fear, when actually it's the very time to see that there is light there, and not only look for the light, but to be the light. And a lot of what we talk about is how you can be the light and you can help the world to be a better place. Many people think, you know, I'm too small, there's not a lot I can do. But ultimately, in our choices moment by moment, we all have the power to make a positive difference.
Absolutely. And that was a publication I wrote the foreword for that one as well. And
you did indeed.
Magnificent. I hope it comes up today.
So that's from both of us. This is an interesting little book. I mean, one of the things that lots of people believe, that age is a barrier. Well, you know, I'm 68, and this is a book about taking on a leadership role within your own life and with others as you start to be more mature. And so this is called Genuinely New, a powerful journal and action planner, discovering your new leadership identity, powerful purpose, and training life after 60. And I know many people who are starting a new career, starting a new way of being, rather than retiring and settling for golf, ladies what lunch and daytime TV. And it's such a waste to all of your expertise, experience, and your enthusiasms and passions. And nobody's suggesting you've got to do a 9-to-5 job, quite the opposite. But actually, how are you using yours? If you are approaching, you're in your 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, what are you doing to make the most of your life day by day? And so that's a little journal for that. Self-care, I know that's something that you're very keen on, and you've got a whole host of journals around self-care and videos. But one of the things that I think is so important to do is to fill your battery up. And you know, lots of people talk about meditating. It's not something I find easy, but where I know that I am actually opening the, you know, the window of my soul is when I'm in the garden. And you know, that's a picture of me in my garden. And this is a journal which is around finding the way to support yourself in terms of your spiritual health, finding the window of on your soul, which may be very different to mine. The important thing is that you are aware, that you explore and discover it, whatever that it may be. And it might be meditation, but it also could be walking in nature, or creatively painting or drawing or writing or making music, or it could be that sitting and contemplating a navel. But whatever it is, you need to find it.
Yes.
This is one which is looking again at embracing the author within. We've all got a book in us. Lots of people think it happens to people elsewhere. Using your experiences, your life experiences. I bet, you know, even, well, especially the most challenging times in your life, that if only you'd known what you knew at the end of the experience, at the beginning, you could have helped yourself and the experience would have been a lot less traumatic. And that would make a great book. And lots of people think you've got to find a publisher and it's expensive and it's time consuming. Here's a little book which shares my author journey and the fact that all of the vast majority of these publications have been, they've been easy to create because they come self-published, within. They're self-published. It's free to publish. The only cost in any of these has been using actually Canva, which is very inexpensive to design the cover, but you can do that in KDP within Amazon. It doesn't have to cost you a penny, and it talks to you about my journey and how you might then use your expertise. And at the back, it's a journal which has got some structure to it to help you get your first book published. And this one is attached to there's a series of journals which are attached to one of my conventional style books, which is Thriving Not Surviving, the 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfillment. And there is an intentional journal which includes with it things like collecting gratitudes and a thank bank to collect those. And again, it's structured with just some questions, a question a day to think about. And there's also blank pages for those days when you don't want to follow a question, but you just want to follow what comes to you. So I think the last two, these are AliNICOLE's. The first is Love Thyself and Be the Love You Wish to Receive. And I think so many people, and it's something that I struggled with, you know, I love to help people, but it was quite a journey to start to embrace other people being able to help me. And I think that loving yourself and be and give the love you wish to receive is a really powerful little journal, which looks at how ready are you to receive, and what do you need to do to be more able to receive graciously and also to give. And then the last one that I have is The Human Butterfly Effect, an inspirational journal to discovering how your life purpose impacts on the world. And, you know, many people talk about metamorphosis, and that's one of your themes in many of your journals and videos, is how being a caterpillar is one thing, but most people get stuck being a bigger caterpillar. They don't recognize that in the metamorphosis of the pupa that we actually become unformed, and then we have to let go of being a caterpillar in order to be a butterfly. But AliNICOLE also talks about the metamorphosis, taking that on a journey further and further through Phoenix and Eagle and onwards. And that's a really good starting book if you are ready to allow yourself to move from being a caterpillar. I'd really recommend that one.
Awesome. And on the metamorphosis, there's a publication that's missing because the Millionaire Monarch.
I have. Yes, I have. Sorry about that.
No, yes. So I'm going to have you, if you can go and I'll talk, you can go and look for that one.
Right. If you hold on, I will.
Oh, absolutely. 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 So I'm so glad that it actually sort of ended there in terms of what she was presenting, because there's a lot of metamorphosis that will be taking place during this time as codes are unlocking and you are discovering more about your truth and how you've actually evolved. And that evolution will then bring illumination to the expansiveness of you really being able to expand and ascend into this higher context and higher version, you know, of who you are. And so I'm so excited about what's going to be unfolding, you know, today, and looking forward to which journals will actually jump out, and we'll be able to do the reading and sort of some unlocking from a collective perspective. But there will also be a time where we'll be inviting you to just be present with what is taking place and providing some prompts for you to think about and to be able to get some insight and clarity, even from a jumpstart kind of initial state, because you'll be able to go back and listen to this afterwards. But yeah, so were you able to locate?
I'm really sorry. I've looked in the 2 places it would be, and it's not there. So I'm really sorry. I don't know what's happened to it. I'll have to find that afterwards. It's hiding.
Okay, well, if something comes up, you know, from it, and also too, we can ask, you know, even if it needs to be present, and since it's been brought up, I'll definitely make sure that it's included, you know, within the description. And I know that we have featured that, you know, publication. Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to take a moment. I'll ask you to take a moment too, for that journal to reveal itself to you where it may be. So let's take about 3 deep breaths, please. Okay, so it's no mistake, honestly, that that's not showing up right now, because this is really about a discovery and having to look for that next level and embodying all of what will be before someone can actually really expand into that. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to be revealed to you where the journal is to go and get it, but it's that at this moment, we're just creating a more expansive space for the context. And then what we'll do is go ahead and start with what's coming up, and that won't be present at this moment because maybe it doesn't need to come in as of now. And then if it was present, it may, jump up, just from eyesight, even versus just really divine guidance. So we'll just let that be. And if it reveals itself, where it is, then we'll allow it. And if not, we can always do, a screen share. So go over to Amazon or so and see if it even comes up. So let's just take a moment now, because I feel that there's something that's about to shift into kind of another core theme here. So we've been talking about the expansiveness of the higher context, but with that metamorphosis energy, there's more of the unformed to form coming into play. So what's actually coming up now is bring up the human butterfly effect. Yeah, so let me be present with that. Show it up again, please. Just give me just a moment here. Okay, so something that's coming up for me to speak about before we actually get into the context is about sort of the collapsing of duality, in a sense, because sometimes people can think that their life purpose is a specific mission, that they're called to a specific vocation or occupation, so to speak, where life as a whole is the life purpose. It is a cohesiveness of your everyday existence, of you bringing purpose to everything, in addition to any mission that you're called to, or maybe even your occupation, or so just whatever you do. It is all the embodiment of one. But as you are present with the quote unquote categorization of your life and your work or certain roles that you play, what happens is that you have this preparation that's taking place on all these different levels. So you can consider your purpose to be multidimensional, but just in one cohesive structure. And so being guided to stay present with this for just a moment, so that the expanded awareness or context can come in terms of the embodiment of life itself. So the embodiment of life itself is you being able to bring the full expression and the wholeness of who you are in every given moment. So every time you're doing something, you are bringing purpose to everything. Gina is writing at this moment. She is bringing purpose to a pen or a pencil and a notebook. And that started with someone's aha and divine guidance to bring that into purpose for us to be leveraging. And you have to be able to see your life as a whole, everything you do, as being very purposeful. Each of us are sitting at this moment or standing on a floor or so, but I would think that most of us are sitting at this time listening to this. So even the very fact that you're sitting on a chair or a couch or whatever is bringing purpose to someone else's purpose. It started with one person, and then it continued of others keep innovating chairs and couches and all these different things. So you have to be really present with the whole of life and seeing everything is being purposeful. If you crack an egg, you are bringing purpose to that egg. You are doing something that was given as someone to a vision at one point, to leverage these different contexts into a manifestation that we call life experiences. So everything that we're doing, whether we're speaking into laptops or into this, we're bringing purpose to every single thing. So you have to be really intentional about your life in that way. Then you can be able to look at the whole of what you do, whether it is your vocation, whether it is hobbies, whether it is the roles that you play, whether it's a parent, you know, a grandparent, an auntie, uncle, however, all of these make up the cohesive unit of you. And this is what ripples out in the world as an overall life purpose. So with that being said, Gina can allow you to be present with that journal, and whatever you open up to, you can share that in reading. And then if there's some expanded awareness that comes, you know, around that, then we'll just see how that goes.
There are two things that are jumping out. The first is every life is important, and what we choose to do or don't have an effect on our lives and others in a way that are far beyond our comprehension. And then for me, the power of, so there's an introduction and there's a group of questions for you to ponder on as part of the journal. And the question that really jumps out is, are there any areas in my life that require change, growth, or shifting that I need to be aware of?
And that's so powerful. Let me stop you right there. That's so powerful, because remember on the onset, I said something's changing, something's shifting. Yeah. We're shifting into a more expanded context, but another core theme is coming up that does obviously link itself to the expanded higher self, but we are getting more into the metamorphosis and the discovery and looking, and that's exactly what's the question, the prompt there that's come up, and the exploration. So what we want to do at this time before we move forward to speak on anything else is let's take a deep breath and give a few moments for people to think about that. And if they do have writing materials or their own journals or so, which I should have actually invited everyone to get note-taking material, and which we'll do that now. If you want to go and grab a pen and paper or your journal or so that you can be very present, with this and do some jotting down. But meanwhile, as others may be going and others may just want to be present with this, we'll move forward to allow people to be present with asking themselves this. So Gina, I'm going to have you to read that again, the question.
The question is, are there any areas in my life that require change, growth, or shifting that I need to be aware of?
So everyone take 3 nice deep breaths, please, as you were thinking about that. Okay, so whatever just initially came up, whether you were able to write that down or not, just kind of hold that in thought, and then we'll allow Gina to continue with what else came up for her in divine guidance.
Within this journal or within a different one?
Well, was it something else that came up with that one? I thought you said there were 2 things.
Well, the original bit was the text that I read. Every life is important, and what we choose to do or don't have an effect on our lives and others in a way that are far beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, so let's be present with that, and thank you for revisiting that. About the importance, because a lot of times people don't think about how important their lives are, and they think it's insignificant, or whether they do choose to do something or not, don't really see how it plays a bigger part in the whole. And if you know anything about the butterfly effect and how it ripples out, and how a butterfly can flap its wings and can be in one region, and in another region on the other side of the world, just that one flap and ripple can be bringing about a harvest in some areas and can be bringing about chaos in others. And so when we think intentionally about how we live our lives and think outside of just our world, so to speak, and just thinking, oh, what I do is not really impacting that much. It is, because it actually could be impacting vibrationally someone in another country. And so you do have to be mindful, about how you are being on purpose and living this life, and realize that you are a human butterfly, and what you do has a ripple effect. And so your metamorphosis in thinking and understanding and evolution at this point would be to have the embodiment of this life purpose playing out for the highest expansion. And this is going back to your higher expanded context of the higher self, and understanding now the cohesiveness of the embodiment of everything you do being wrapped up into this. It's not a container, if we call it the container of the expansive you in a sense, because you're in a human format, but definitely a spiritual and more expanded expression in essence. And so within those different dimensions, all those dimensions are playing out in one life purpose, and that is your existence. So you have to be mindful. So Gina, before we get present with other journals or so, because I do feel now that we're going to get ready to segue where I thought we were going to be starting, and that was with the BS. But this came up, and I think it was important to set the foundation, for that. But before we move forward into that, if you want to share anything just around that before we move forward.
I think I've just been led to another extract, which is, it's time to discover your significant part in the greater scheme of life and align with your ultimate purpose for being here. And I think, whether that's within each small thought, emotion, action that you take, or whether that's in that you have a big sense of mission and purpose, is that we are all vibration, and that our individual vibrations act to the collective vibration. Our individual light combines to the collective light. So don't think that you are unimportant. The opposite is actually true. And it is time for you to become more aware and to choose to take action.
Oh, that was beautiful. I love this. I just love the flow of everything. And do you see how you actually did come back to something else? And I was thinking that there was more than one, more than one element. And even though you were sharing initially from what came up and then the question, but then ultimately it did cycle back around, to something else that definitely needed to be shared before we move forward. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so Gina, are you feeling that you want to go to the BS one, or do you feel that, do you want to be present to see if something else comes up?
I think the BS one actually leads very nicely, because what gets in the way of people living their life with purpose, with stepping into being the expanded version of themselves, is the fact that they BS themselves all the time with their limiting belief, their old conditioning. And most people think about other people, being responsible for bullshitting them. But actually the most important factor in all of this is you. So when you look in the mirror, who do you see? When you hear your voice, what do you hear? And how often are you engaging in the BS that you aren't good enough, or that you haven't got enough time, or you can't afford it, or you're not pretty enough, you're not enough? And the other, well, there's several strands, but, taking radical responsibility for who you are and how you turn up on a moment by moment basis, rather than blaming other people or the external circumstances, because in that choosing not to take responsibility, you're not able then to become the best version of yourself, because you are stuck within that container of BS. And so this was designed really to help people look. I mean, when you listen to the news, when you listen to leaders within the business world, how often they're blaming the economy, they blame the fact that their staff don't do what they want, that they have to do it all themselves because they can't delegate to people because they don't trust them. That's all BS. And ultimately, when you take charge of your life and you look in the mirror and you are aware of the BS meter, and when you are falling into that trap, it can help you move on, to expand, to metamorphosize much more quickly.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes. So be present with that. And if anything comes up in terms of you reading, from that, and I'll be present too. If you actually, could you show it to me? Put it up again here.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll
Out
speak in a
is,
minute. Go ahead.
learning to be in tune with your inner wisdom is vital if you want to be in touch with your authentic self. Your inner wisdom offers you the opportunity to recognize the pattern and the impact it's having. When you get past all of the white noise, the squawking and the bullshit, your inner wisdom identifies the authentic way forward. It offers you the lesson and opportunity to grow and become your best self as a person and as a leader. It's your most powerful asset if you recognize it and use it consistently.
That is powerful. And it does even sort of tail dove, if you will, in the sense off of what was previous in terms of the life purpose being important, and something you talk a lot about in terms of being the leader of your life.
Yeah.
And leading from that place. And when you are leading from the higher place of authenticity, and you're not BSing yourself, and you can get to the real of things, you can get to the truth. And that is something that the metamorphosis process allows you to uncover and discover, those things that are no longer a part of the evolution. Because if we look at it and we reverse engineer even the butterfly effect in the human strand or context of it, is when you already see yourself as being the butterfly, everything that is not the butterfly cease to exist.
Yeah.
And everything that Gina just talked about in terms of even the purpose of why she created that, and you bring this into just the life context, is that BS part doesn't exist. That's not a part of the metamorphosis. That's not a part of your metamorphosized, evolutionized expression that's ready to be optimized. And so being able to move past that and into the truth gets you into that more expanded awareness of who you are, the more expanded version of who you are from the heightened sense, and again, the more expansive sense. So Gina, do you want to speak anything to that? Something was telling me to tell you to go to like page 20 and 30. I don't know if you have that numbered or so.
Page 20, did you say, and 30?
20 and 30.
So 20 is, there are 3 questions there.
Okay.
What's been the impact of your own bullshit on the success of your business? What, if any, has been the impact of others' bullshit on the success of your business? And what might you do differently going forward to change things for the better?
Wow. So let's be there. Let's be with that. And so for those of you who are not in business, so to speak, I want you to think about being in the business of being you. Okay. And your life in general. So I'm going to have Gina to go back through those questions and for you to ponder that. So Gina, let's have the first one.
I just say to you that within the journal, the questions are repeated on a
that's fine,
day-by-day basis. But if you go to page 30, they're exactly the same questions.
Okay, perfect. So then they're in different dimensions. Okay, so that's perfect, because what it is, this is perfect. I love this. So here's a decoding opportunity, because when we come to that vibration on the page 30, see there's 10 pages within that. So you can look at that, that's a gap. Even if we want to look at that as that's a decade, right?
Yeah.
Of expansion and evolution. So this brings a catapult. So let's be with the energy of this really quick. So ask the first question, and we're going to be with that, and then I'll guide us, moving forward.
What, if any, has been the impact of your own bullshit on the success of your business?
Okay, so everyone just think about that. And again, if you're not in business, just think about just life in general, and just whatever initially comes up. I want you to jot that down or keep it in your awareness. Okay, Gina, go ahead and move forward to the second one, please.
What's been the impact of others' bullshit on the success of your business?
Now that everyone should be able to answer that one really quickly, right?
Yeah, we can always recognize it in others
Yeah,
more
exactly.
quickly than we can ourselves.
All right.
And then the third is,
Go ahead.
how might you do differently going forward to change things for the better?
Okay, so everyone be present with that. And again, you can jot down what initially comes to you, because these questions are going to come up again. And we're going to be present with that in another dimension and context of it. All right, so I'm going to invite everybody to take a deep breath, please. Okay, so Gina, turn over to the page 30.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So now let's imagine that we've taken an evolutionary leap, and we're going to be present now with those same questions as if, let's say, 10 minutes, 10 days, or 10 years have gone by. So it is the energy of 10. And not to be so focused around that, that's just the space that's being created right now in terms of the evolutionary time gap, so that there is a catapult in the metamorphosis and the understanding to really catch you up with your truth. So Gina, interesting. We're going to go in the reverse order here. So ask the questions in the reverse.
So what might you do differently going forward to change things for the better?
Okay, so everyone jot that down. What might you change? And that's interesting, not even knowing what the context is in this dimension yet, but it's asking for the reversal. Okay, so Gina, either ask the next one going up, or whatever's guided to ask the first one, or however you're being, but I knew we needed to start with the reverse, but I'm being fluid enough that it could be that now you ask the first question. So just however you're guided.
So what has been the impact of others' bullshit on the success of your business?
Okay, so yeah, so you're like, so everybody be present with that. Okay, now Gina, go ahead and ask the next one.
What, if any, has been the impact of your own bullshit on the success of your business or your life?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to provide a little context to this, because there would be kind of a mixed bag of answers and things, you know, around this. Now, some of you, when you get to that, the 10-year or 10-minute or 10 days gap, for some may find that you had no answers for any of them, or maybe just one or so. And partly because so much of you has changed that you don't have the BS present anymore to have that elimination factor going on. And then for some of you, the answers could be the same, but with a little bit more expanded, you know, context, you know, to it. And so Gina, actually, so be present with you for a moment, because something's coming up in terms of just doing that, even though you were facilitating and maybe not being, you know, present for your own answer, so to speak. Did you get a vibrational context in terms of the reversal energy, or even the purpose to do it in this format? What, do you have any thoughts around that?
I think the last question, the what might you do differently, it's quite often useful to do things with no particular context, and just allow your inner wisdom to highlight what that might be, and to be really open and fluid. And with these intentional journals, the questions are there just as a starting point.
Right.
but and they're quite deliberately repeated because you go deeper and deeper and into different dimensions. But I think, you know, even if you just had a blank piece of paper and just asked yourself the question, what is it I'm doing that is contributing to the parts of my life that are good, and what am I doing that I'd like to do differently moving forward? And in doing that, you open the framework of your thinking.
Absolutely. That was well stated. Absolutely. And it's good to be able to do it in dimensions, especially in an intensive like this, because of course, organically, people would not be moving maybe that fast to ask that question again, you know, 10 days from now or
but you
10
can
minutes
ask
from
the
now.
question the next day,
Yeah.
and you'll get a different answer if
Absolutely.
you're open to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you stated that too, because that just goes to show that we need to, in order to catapult ourselves into our evolution, sometimes we have to come back and ask that same question again, even right after. But in this case, we time leaped in a sense because we went to a different page and did not ask it from that same page, asking it over again. So let me rinse and repeat this again. And let me ask this question again, which I do recommend that individuals, when they're doing the intentional journaling aspect and they have the prompts and the triggers, to actually go through the prompts and triggers maybe 3 times in that same context and see what comes up. In this case, because we're doing an intensive and it is really evolutionizing you into that expanded aspect, which is the metamorphosized version of you, that is the higher context. So we are doing this in dimensions. And so being able to be present with what answers came up in that time leap. And like I said, for some initially, besides maybe the first one or so, or the other ones may not have any answers around that because they've already kind of, you know, resolved a lot of that. And it may be that what comes up for them is how they're actually helping other people to not, you know, be in that, you know, state of being or existence or however. So, which then speaks to the life purpose as a whole too, of your contribution to helping people become limitless and get past their own BS and whatever else is. That's where you're sharing your story of how you got past it. And now you're helping other people to get past it. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag, but I just wanted to bring that. I felt guided to share some context around that in terms of what different people might, you know, be getting, and just kind of a framework, you know, there, because that's part of the decoding aspect. Some people today, Gina, will start to discover more of their life purpose from a mission perspective and discover that they have this higher potential to lead and be able to bring forth different dimensions of their voice and who they are, and just different elements of their life purpose. So, okay. All right. So Gina, be present. What is there a category or so that is jumping out to you? Or
I think that when we're talking about leading others, that leads me to the
nice segue. Yeah.
Leadership. That seems a logical place to go next.
Okay.
And of we've got limitless, emerging, authentic, and profitable. It's the authentic one that's jumping out.
Okay. All right.
And again, that follows the same theme, really, about how you show up on a day-by-day basis. Are you being authentic to the true essence of who you are when you're being your best self? So the bit that's jumping out to me is enlightened, authentic leaders have a vital role to play in being a catalyst for change. They have the capacity to be at the forefront, to be the leader of leaders, and to have a profound impact on the future of the human race. Are you up for the challenge? Do you have a strong sense of purpose based on service and leadership? Will you step into your role as an enlightened, authentic leader and light the way for others? Your gifts are very much needed now. Those who have the courage to be truly authentic and to take action and to accelerate their evolutionary journey will unlock the significant rewards as a result.
So let's be present with unlocking the rewards in the present moment, because that's rich right there. There's something here that needs to be grounded. And what I'm sensing is that this is going to provide the context of that shift that we've been gearing up for.
Yeah.
Because there's already been a catapulting aspect that has happened. And what I mean by that is that there's some evolution that's taking place just within the journaling process, this intensive process, everything that's going on. There's been already some time and dimensional leaping. And so let me give a context to this too, because this is not in a woo-woo way. This is very much in a expanded awareness way, that you become aware and awakened to more of the truth of who you are. And that is something that can be illuminated to you really moment by moment. So just as I can say to Gina, you are just magnificent. And even though she can get a sense of that, but it could be something as the conversations happening is that things come up from her and she can see more illumination to her brilliance and see, wow, I just shared about this in this way. And yes, it expanded upon and expounded upon that magnificent energy of that flow coming through her to be divinely guided. So it's something very as simple as that. And those are dimensions. So one awareness gives birth to another awareness, then gives birth to more of an expanded context. So she can share from one aspect and then something triggers, and then she's sharing from another aspect. And so it's in that simplicity in terms of dimensions and even unlocking these higher codes. So something coming up in terms of being present with the reward. So Gina, I'm going to ask that you read that last sentence again.
Those who have the courage to be truly authentic and to take action and accelerate their evolutionary journey will unlock significant rewards as a result.
Absolutely. And the significant reward has everything to do with displaying that higher truth of who you are, which is the true authentic success, or self, I should say, that will bring forth success. So within the context is that it is the reward within the reward within the reward. So imagine yourself going to a treasure chest and you're not bringing out all the gems at once, but you're bringing out certain jewels, or maybe one jewel at a time, or it could be multiple, but ultimately you're not dumping the whole chest out. And so that's how you have to see these rewards, is that they are already established within this treasure chest, and more can be added. But as more are being added, you need to benefit from the rewards that are there. And this is looking at who you are. This is the expansiveness, looking at the treasure of yourself and seeing all of the gems and jewels, your magnificence. And now what needs to be put on display in the world, and the reward of being able to value yourself and honor yourself for this higher truth, honoring the journey that you've been on and appreciating that journey and being able to see it as extremely significant. It goes back to what was shared in the human butterfly effect and understanding the importance of your life. And when you understand the importance of your life and who you are and how that ripples out in the world, you come back to the treasure chest essence of yourself and see how each gem within your treasure chest plays a significant part and holds a significant amount of value. Each one, the chest within itself is priceless and valuable. Each one has significant value to them. And so as you are giving out, more treasures are coming in, or more treasure chests are being established, or you'll discover more treasure chests. That's the different dimensions. So we don't get so fixated just on the treasure chest that is before you in awareness now. Understand that there are more, but at least being aware of it, you need to maximize the benefit of that treasure chest. And that is the reward that you need to be present with and extract. As you share one reward of yourself, you then are rewarded in other ways. As you continue to give out, more of your reward is illuminated to you in multiple ways. So that's something that has just come up, you know, in the unlocking the rewards code, if you will. So Gina, would you like to speak to any of that?
I think the recognition that what we take as ordinary and it's just us and it's nothing, and many people think, well, what have I got to offer? I think when people step into their genuine power and they recognize that they have, they bring with them the essence of who they are, and that in itself is enough, but they also bring the learning that they have generated through their lifetime, the experience, the expertise, the skill set, the intuition, the connections, and those in themselves are treasures.
Absolutely.
Not only a treasure to yourself, but also things that other people would find incredibly valuable, helping them along their journey. And so I think so many people try to be something that they think other people want them to be. And in doing so, they fail to see who they truly are and to own that. And being authentic is recognizing that, you know, celebrate your strengths, recognize your weaknesses, or I would call them areas for development, and that know that vulnerability does not mean that you are weak. Vulnerability, so long as it's not you being a victim, but being vulnerable and recognizing, you know, that there are always things that could be even better. That in itself is a treasure.
Absolutely.
Because when you do it, it allows other people to do it too.
Absolutely. That was a gem right there. That was a reward right there in everything that she stated. Something that is coming up. Would you hold up though the Limitless? The Limitless. Yes. So let me be with that. And so here we go. So the energy of fluidity, and as you notice on the cover, there's the water element. And so we're coming, you know, back to what we were talking about earlier, is that within your authenticity, allow yourself to be limitless and expansive in this. Allow yourself to be true to each and every part of you that desires to be expressed, because that within itself expands the rewards of who you are, and it reveals to you more of the treasures that are there within you. In this life, we are always going to be on this continuous treasure hunt within ourselves, uncovering these gems. And sometimes there are pressures in life, like there's a diamond of you still in the coal that the pressure has to, you know, be put on it to bring forth that extraction, right? And so as we are allowing both the extraction and the expansion to take place, that ultimately brings about the higher evolution of this higher self that goes back to kind of the core theme that started off, but now in this shifting into really a metamorphosized individual who is sharing their authentic truth and being limitless with that, but having the fluidity and flexibility to go with the flow of whatever that authentic expression will yield and be at any given time, and not bottling your authenticity up into one expression. It could be that expression at that point, but not necessarily embodying it as an identity that you can't be flexible with. So something that's coming up to share, Gina, is when we think about just in whether business or branding or different things like that, how people will embody a certain identity within their branding, and then they're so locked into that they don't allow the expansiveness to happen for them to take form in another way, to express a different dimension of themselves, because it's like, well, I put myself out there as this, and now I have to be this all the time because people have come to know me as this. And so there's the opportunity within life and within whatever you are doing, just in this thriving existence of who you are, allow yourself to be limitless, allow yourself to be fluid, and be the leader and authority of that essence and that expression, so that you don't allow yourself to be confined. that's where you have to be the ocean in consciousness. That's where you have to allow yourself, as Gina was talking about earlier, to be on the edge of the universe and keep being on the edge and keep letting that expand and expand, and just don't allow yourself to be containerized. So that just came up just from the energy and essence of
I'm
that publication.
smiling because the bit that's jumping out of the page before you started speaking said, letting go of your inner blueprint and the need to control how things will move forward and what shape the outcome will look like is so important. Therein lies the sweet spot, as only then will you be totally aligned and open the floodgates to the limitless opportunities we swipe.
Oh, wow. Just incredible, just magnificent. Don't you just love how
I do.
This just organically takes shape? It's just so divinely guided. Wow, that's incredible. Do you have anything else you want to share around it?
This is the section of the introduction it's talking about having a strong sense of purpose, and but the last paragraph says it's time to challenge anything which is keeping you playing small. The greatest limit to your fulfilling your potential and your divine purpose is likely to be you.
Perfect. Wow. There's definitely some decoding to recoding happening, you know, in terms of this, even vibrationally, and bringing up this level of awareness. And I love how the guidance is taking place just in terms of, again, what comes up in the reading, because none of this is pre-planned or anything. It's just all in the present moment. And you can just see the organic development and how we've opened up the space for the expansion and for the fluidity. And look at just how magnificent the fluidity is taking place in terms of what the journals are revealing to come up in order for people to really start unlocking these different dimensions and the encoding. Yeah, it's just great. It's wonderful. All right, so I'm going to invite everybody to take 3 nice deep breaths, please. Okay, so Gina, is there another group that's jumping out at you?
Leading on from there, the profitability group.
Okay.
And of those,
would you put those all up?
So there's the journey, the creating profits from the inside out, the profitable enlightened leader's journey, and discovering new levels of financial power the right way. Oops.
Okay. All right. So which one is being more illuminate to you?
I think the profitable enlightened leader's journey.
That's the one that was coming up for me, but I wanted to see what was that was the one that jumped out for me. That was the one that jumped out for me. So and as you are being present, you know, with that, the expansion around enlightenment, because enlightenment is one of those terms that we hear, and definitely it brings greater awareness and clarity, and being able to expand enlightenment in terms of epiphanies and ahas and, you know, and different things like that. And in this context, you're being invited to actually even suspend the knowledge in terms of what that has meant to you. We talked about that earlier when Gina brought up about the languaging. So there's a newer context to enlightenment that wants to reveal itself. And there's something around what's going to be shared that will provide a trigger for you to be able to get a different glimpse and awareness or a new approach to that enlightenment. So Gina, turn it back over to you.
What's jumped out is the little section which is called, "Are you a lemming or a leader?" And
that within itself is an enlightenment just to ask that question, right? What illumination would happen here.
And partway through it says, just like lemmings moving towards the cliff edge, humanity is moving inexorably towards destroying itself and the planet we call home. Time is of the essence. You've got a vital choice to make. Will you follow the crowd and continue to use the same flawed thinking and actions which have led us to this place? Or do you have the courage to awaken, to step away from the crowd and to find a better, more conscious way forward? Do you have the courage to look within, to do the deep self-reflection and become the true leader of your own life? Do you have the courage to step into your genuine power and release the limitless potential of being a profitable, enlightened leader? Are you ready to be in the vanguard, to become a shining beacon which inspires and enlightens the way for others?
So being consciously courageous to do exactly what Gina is speaking about. And it takes that courageousness and a new level of commitment. And this is where the new approach to enlightenment comes in. And the expanded awareness around that is that you have to be able to see what is being courageous about now as you are being more enlightened to this higher level of profitability. The higher level of profitability is seeing it through the multidimensional holistic premise approach and being able to see this through different eyes. Going back to the rewards aspect and the different treasures and the jewels, these are all profitability on different levels of your essence and your expression. And ultimately, what this brings about is the greater context of who you are in terms of this higher awareness of beingness in this more metamorphosized state, I should say, because that is the evolution of who you are. And that's actually where we're speaking from and coming from during this time, because even within this short time in this intensive, again, so much evolution has taken place, so much time leaping has taken place in terms of now catching you up with organically this enlightenment and this new start of the journey. So just imagine yourself being the butterfly outside of the cocoon now. This brings about a new journey. So that is going to bring about a new journey of enlightenment. And what do you do with this? So you've discovered the treasures from within and the ones that need to be displayed now. But what do you do with that? How do you leverage these rewards? And so what Gina has been sharing gives you a glimpse of how you can kind of bring that into, even in your mind, into formation of how to really move forward with that. So Gina, do you have anything you would like to expound upon there?
I would say that we have to create the necessary momentum.
Yes, and certainly. Yes.
And there is a section in there around creating the necessary momentum.
And let me say something real quick before you move forward, because in creating the necessary momentum, this necessary momentum is now, again, looking at oneself outside of the cocoon aspect. And now what momentum, because this is a new journey, this is a new experience that you are not accustomed to. You're prepared and formed for it, but you have no actuality or practicality in terms of a physical experience. And so now what she's saying, you take this from this point, and now how do you create the momentum to accelerate this way of beingness so that you can really adopt and adapt and adjust to this new part of the journey?
And what struck me out of that section was, when you drive along a road, you can't always see the whole route. You can only see the part of the road directly in front of you.
Right.
The same is true of the journey to success in this new era of consciousness.
Absolutely.
Many people want to be able to see the whole journey, or they are so fixated on the destination that they miss the richness of the journey. And this is about being present and recognizing that, things will unfold, they will evolve as you go along the journey, but you're not going to see it all from the start.
That's right. And nor do you need to, because that would be confinement in terms of what's interesting about the journey of life and even unlocking the codes. So when we think about a puzzle, and you get a puzzle and you see on the box what the puzzle is ultimately supposed to look like, and it helps that way you know what you're putting together. The way the codes unlock in life and the journey doesn't actually give you that visual blueprint in terms of knowing exactly how that puzzle is going to piece up, so to speak. you see more of the grander context of what's coming into form as you're going, and everything that's been collected and gathered, the fragments of the journey and different things that are still relevant, then start to take on this divine assimilation process. That's when you know more of what you're working with in terms of, but you don't get so destination distracted that you miss the richness and the rewards that are unfolding, because really it's being built, the future, if you will, is all being built around what's unfolding. And then not only that, then that expands and evolves exponentially, sometimes within a matter of, just a short frame. So we go back to what we were talking about in terms of the exercise done earlier, where you were on one page, page 20 of a publication, and the questions that are there, and then we're skipping over 10 pages with the same questions. That's a time gap, that's a time leap, and revealing something different. The journey is the same. So in anything, we still have to allow this to become a formless creation. So you can't get so focused on the form. That's why, as my motto goes, is that your divine destiny codes, your divine dominion destiny codes are not found in the stars or in the cards. They're in the life codes, which continue to be revealed. So that means that you just can't look at one particular thing and then just say, okay, this is predicting my future here, and I need to start working towards this in this way. No, some things are a trigger and they provide maybe a context, but the future is not formed. You are bringing formation into every creation moment by moment, but you have to be flexible because they have the potential to expand and evolve. And so we're showing this even just in journal reading, where in one frame, when Gina was sharing from one of the publications, and then I got a sense that there was something else, and then she shared initially what had come up for her. But then as the conversation and the session continued to expand, in the sense, then a trigger came up and it led her to share more of the expanded awareness around the context. And it demonstrated that we did not need to move on before actually revealing that part, right, Gina?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so that's just a clear example of how the journey unfolds. And sometimes we want to be in another place, before not understanding that there's still something there that potentially, if you moved on, you wouldn't actually go back and grasp that part. And so that's why the journey is so important, to be present and to extract as much that needs to come up and be present for more revelation, so that you can build upon that moving forward. And you'll see how significant it is, or was, so to speak, to actually have grasped that level of the understanding and comprehension. So that's just great. So Gina, do you have anything else you want to say around that before we get present?
I don't think so. I think that's that. We've done that one.
Okay, with that group. Okay, perfect. So, so is anything else coming to you at this point? Another section or another journal section or category?
Another category, that would be the empath category, which is quite a big one. Where
so I know you got two empath. Is it both or just one?
When you say two empaths, sorry.
Oh, you combined hours. That's right. Okay. You combined. Okay.
There's ours, yours, and mine.
Yes. Okay, they're combined. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so whatever your guidance is.
Yeah. I think the accelerate your empathic potential is the one that shouts out, because
that would seem more fitting actually too. Based on the evolution that's taking place within here, I would say that would definitely be the perfect one. Okay, go ahead.
That the others, I think, are designed for people who are perhaps not so far on their journey.
Yes.
But discovering your it's back to the same thing. It's about your limitless purpose as an empathic leader and as an empath. And I think the first thing I'd like to say is that empaths, this is something that you say very often that, you know, empaths have a huge role to play as leaders in the light. And I think that for many empaths, they don't see themselves as leaders, and it's time for them to accelerate that. And you know, the introduction starts with stepping into your divine purpose, and the fact that empaths have a divine purpose to help humanity make the transition into a new higher level of consciousness. And that as an empath, you already know you're here to make a positive difference, but how much is completely dependent upon how prepared you are to step into your genuine power as an empath, and how ready you are to let go of any limitations holding you back. And that empathic influencers have the capacity to deepen the development of the collective consciousness, and failure to embrace that role will not only limit you, but will hold back the development of those who are waiting for your help to become awakened.
Goes back to that ripple effect, that butterfly effect, that purpose, right? What you do and what you don't do has a tremendous impact.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that, you know, there are many, we both know people who are incredibly powerful, able empaths and leaders, but how vital it is to lead into the light and not to be caught up with false
the false callings.
False callings. I think that's really important. So let's have a look at this.
Well, before you go there, if I can get you, you can put your thumb to hold the place. Would you bring the book cover up? Would you hold the accelerated? Yeah, the accelerated. So let me be with this, because even just the vibration of the cover is kind of galactical in a sense. And, and I mean that really in a more catapultic way, because we have been in an evolutionary expansion. And so when you look at the cover, already it kind of demonstrates limitlessness and the possibilities in dimensions, and see this within yourself, and imagine that you are accelerating and you're finding and discovering your greater potential, because it is about accelerating. And this goes far beyond just those who are empathic, because everyone is empathic to a certain extent and may awaken to that empathic gifting that they have, even if they've never really consider themselves to be empathic. But just in the general sense, the acceleration energy is that this intensive is really about accelerating the expansiveness into this higher expanded version of who you are. And so you've catapulted so much, and now it's time to actually look at the potential and be present with the potential, even if you don't know what that is. Going back to what I mentioned about not having the puzzle pieces, not having the picture and knowing how the puzzle pieces fit, but being present with the puzzle piece of potential for this moment is going to be extremely vital. So Gina, I turn it back over to you for anything you want to share, you know, from that.
So I would say the bits that it's to be honest with yourself. But it brings us back to the theme at the beginning, really honest. Take radical responsibility for what has been before, and for the decision you choose to choose a different way of being and doing going forward. You are designed to be a magnificent, powerful, limitless being, and it's your right and your responsibility to own your design and to fulfill your divine purpose. No judgment. No, I should have, I shouldn't have. No beating yourself up for not owning your magnificence earlier. It's important that you're absolutely honest with yourself. It's all very well trying to pull the wool over others' eyes, but attempting to fool yourself simply cements everything which is keeping you stuck.
And so we need to be present with this, because this is the part to really accelerate and to catapult in terms of the right now potential and honest evaluation of self. And so if we just take the power of what has happened within this particular intensive so far, this is the opportunity to accelerate. And it goes back to what Gina was just reading in terms of whatever you're coming into the awareness of, and maybe you thought you should have known this before, forget about that. We're in the power of the present moment. So it's not about judging, I could have, I should have been more aware or awake to this. How did I miss this? The power is in the present moment. And the potential is about the right now potential. And how do we accelerate that? So we want to actually do some deep breathing on this acceleration. And as we do this, where I want your mindset, or I'm going to invite you, is just to be present again with being outside of the cocoon of your experience and already being in the evolved state, and what you're going to do from now to accelerate that importance of being this ripple in the world and leading in this way. So we want to accelerate and bring clarification to more of what that purpose can be. So I'm going to invite everyone to take 5 deep breaths, please. Okay. All right. So those breaths were designed to really sort of anchor and ground and activate, if you will, what has been shared so far. Because what I sense is taking place now is that there is another time leap to happen very quickly in what will come forth. And so it was important to now be at this accelerated juncture, so to speak, and to be present with the potential and the possibilities, and now allow that to be expanded. So this is a newer dimension of the expanded context. It's interesting, there's some transition energy that's coming up. And what that is it's a juncture. It's another, going into another dimension, another portal, so to speak. And I saw Gina kind of smile a little bit. Gina, was there something that came up?
Just, well, firstly, it never ceases to amaze me how, when you're really focused and you're really intentional, how quickly these transitions can happen. We've got, most people have got a belief that things are going to be difficult and they're going to take a lot of time. But that's an old, outmoded belief. And if you are ready and you are open and prepared, then, you know, you use the word catapult, you know, the trajectory is like a rocket going from one dimension to another once you're ready.
Absolutely. So something is coming up. So would you bring forth your publication for the Soar into New Heights? Lee, that's one of the empathic ones.
It is. Where is it?
Okay, so it may not be present. So if it's not present, when it's time to actually get the metamorphosis one, there's a reason why energies of journals are coming up that aren't present. Right. And it may be that, like I said, there's a context to it that we will speak about, and then at some point you will be able to locate them. And if not, it'll be okay. But they're coming up for a reason. And so what we'll do is just speak to the context of the soaring aspect. And even though that publication is one that is designed for empaths, but it really can speak to the whole of any individual, because this is the time where you are taking flight, where you are soaring, because you're outside of the metamorphosis aspect and you are in the evolutionized aspect. And now we want to get a glimpse of what the potential is from this heightened sense. So when you think about soaring, we think more so about eagles. So when you think about having an eagle's eye as it relates to your purpose and potential, versus when you are just in kind of a caterpillar mode, you see straight on, or versus when you were given traditional templates of how you should reach your goals, it's very just straight line, kind of a linear process, and you're just looking at your goals. But when you are ascended in your awareness and your view, the perception is to be able to have this panoramic view of multiple opportunities and possibilities of how expansive this potential path is. So hear me when I say this, the expansiveness of the potential path, all right? But this expansiveness has many paths within the path, just like how you have many dimensions of who you are within this one cohesive essence. So the purpose of life and everything that has come up at this point is that it's all one, but there's many compartments and dimensions of it, and they start to play out. But you need to, at this point, be able to have that panoramic, more eagle's eye view on what that greater potential could be. So I'm going to invite everyone to take a nice deep breath, please. Okay. All right. So Gina, is there anything else coming up for you within that pile, or are you feeling guided to move? I feel another transition, coming up. So it may be that we're shifting into another.
I think that to go to the hope, the time
Perfect.
become a beacon of light and hope.
Oh, perfect.
And on the back cover, as I'm holding it up, it says, creating a sense of conscious hope is vital in times of challenge. Having hope opens up a future of possibilities as we're better resourced, more resilient and creative when we're able to trust in the future. And I think that all of the things that we've been talking about are in part of that essence is becoming a beacon and light of hope in the world. And enabling people to feel that they can trust the future, that there are good things for all of us if we choose to focus them and to activate them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is perfect. And it really goes back to what you were speaking to earlier, just in terms of when leaders or just people in general have allowed themselves to be kind of darkened and what I call self-induced ignorance. And they've allowed themselves to be in that space. They don't open up the potential for that expansion. So when you're having conscious hope, that is bringing awareness to expanding the hope that has been suspended in some cases. But at this point in this new elevation, this more higher level of enlightenment, in a sense, to be able to be not just hopeful for yourself, but hopeful for greater change in the rest of the world. But where does that change agent for this hope start? It starts with you. It starts with how you change, allow yourself to be changed, how you allow yourself to embody your true light so that you can be a beacon of light and then be able to illuminate your potential and then ultimately bring that greater potential into the world at large. When that happens, wherever you're shining, there can be no darkness. And then that will give new hope and new light to others. And that's ultimately what you want to bring about. So Gina, is there anything else around that? Or to move forward?
So trust, peace, joy, acceptance, forgiveness, love, and hope are high frequency emotions. Operating at a high vibrational frequency unlocks the door to experiencing an infinitely better quality of life. It creates a feeling of greater power in every aspect of your life. Day-to-day life becomes happier, more successful, more fulfilling as a result. Your energy becomes full of light and unlocks so many possibilities. Synchronicities increase, there's a feeling of ease and grace, and manifesting your desires becomes easier. Others are attracted to those who operate at a high vibrational frequency as it makes them feel more positive.
Oh, that, just hearing that, I just want to be present with that for just a moment, because that right there has so much to it. And I want everyone to grasp what that means for them without me or even Gina putting any more context to this. So just be present with what was spoken. And even if you can't remember everything, just be present with the vibration. Okay, so that's enough to ground for the transition. So are you feeling guided to any other section or anything else?
That feels right, I think, to go on. The group that now are calling me are A Fresh New Start with God and Healing Possible, particularly out of that.
Okay, great. You're the spiritual group. Okay, out of that one. Okay, okay, all right.
for me, this is a book I keep going back to,
Mhm.
which is The Fresh New Start with God. And it's one that I found to be pretty profound. And
so give me a moment, bring that back up here, because I'm feeling this is a connection here. Okay, this is the juncture here. So this is the, if you want to call it, the bridge connection, so to speak. This is the transition into the higher source connection, which is the heightenedness of the evolution, the spiritual evolution. And this is the part that really needs to be grounded and anchored in order for all of the other components and everything else to be shared. Is that when you think about just the body has to be alive, and with what? The spirit, with breath, the breath of life. The connection to the creator is what alivens us. And so this juncture here is bringing new life into that expanded context. So it's interesting. It's almost like having a body that's been created, or having the butterfly sense that's been formed, but now it's the new life that comes in that enables it to function at this higher level, to function at all. And so some of you who felt like you've been in dead places, or you've been in this metamorphosis and now being out, what is it that now sources you to live out this higher potential? So, okay, go ahead, Gina.
It doesn't matter how many times I look at this, I am guided back to one particular paragraph. So taking time each day to commune with the source God of all that is infuses us with the power and the focus to live our lives in true alignment with our own divinity. It's so important to call forth the power from within to help us be masterful in all that we do.
Absolutely. Goes right, it ties right into what the preface or premise was coming into this. Is about, this is where you find the true alignment in this new connection, and what does aliven you, and how you have to stay plugged into that, and continue to allow that connection to expand, and don't get caught just in a one way of doing something. And each time you come back to it, as Gina's mentioned, that she keeps being redirected, or coming back to this particular one. Why is that? Because that's a continuation of expansion and evolution. And so there's an opportunity to come back to the same question at a certain phase, and allow it to speak about what the present moment revelation would be. And it's different each time, isn't it?
It is. And the question for me, in fact, when I look through what I've written, it's the question that I'm drawn to each time, and it's different each time. In what ways can I advance in self-mastery and divinity to align with my path of purpose and demonstrate my true connection to source power?
Wow.
Yeah.
How this all just ties in. Just, yeah, it's the continuation.
Yeah.
And it will be an ongoing process. And that's why we can never allow ourselves to feel so much at an arrival point where the pieces of the puzzle are all just together in this one, masterful canvas, so to speak, because the canvas keeps expanding itself. And then there are multiple canvases. So even when you feel complete with one canvas, or one puzzle, I should say, putting one puzzle together, there is another one. But it also too does expound upon the previous puzzle that we feel has come into completion. So an example of this is when you go off to college, and that's a journey within itself. And then you're preparing to go to, let's say, graduate school after you're doing your undergrad. Well, you've completed one phase of a journey, and you're given a diploma, certificate, or whatever the level, that you accomplished. The point is that you've graduated from that level, but you've now started another journey, and you've now gone on. But it took having the journey of being an undergrad to come into the graduate journey. And so when you look at it as that, it is a continuation of education. That yes, you might have arrived at one point, but then you're going on. And even when you go to what seems to be the highest levels of degrees in terms of the academic world, what we know is there's the continuation of education through life. And this is the same. It's the continuation with source. There is no, you just capped off and you've got it all figured out in your spirituality and you're just high ascended mastery and never know, there's always going to be these more expanded levels. Go ahead, Gina.
Well, it goes back to I agree with everything that you're saying, you know, that if you move along a road, part of your journey, you shift within that journey, and you're not in the same place. That the moment you take a step forward, you're no longer in the place that you were.
Right.
And therefore you're coming from a different perspective. And so the question has as much validity after one step as it does after 1,000 or 10,000.
Absolutely. Well, that was perfect. That was brilliant. That was great. Absolutely. Do you have anything else to share around that, or you want to move forward to the next, the
I
journal
think,
that's calling you?
the Impossible would be the next one. And
you can bring that up and show
there we
that.
are.
Okay, share that subtitle if you
The
don't mind.
subtitle is An Inspirational Journal Planner for Consistently Achieving the Miraculous.
That's an embodiment, habitation, energy. Yeah.
And
Okay.
it starts off with, if we dare to believe the impossible for our lives, it will open the gateway to experiencing the miraculous regularly. There is nothing impossible for God to do, and breakthroughs can become the new normal in your life instead of only showing up once in a while.
The habitation experience. This is the difference between visitation and habitation.
Yeah.
When something is a habitation, it takes up residency within you. It is an embodiment. It is a way of being. And just as how we talk about how people have habitual behaviors, okay? Well, some habitual behaviors are okay if they're ones that are for your highest and best good. So having habitual miraculous living would be one of those divine defaults that you could appreciate. Correct, Gina?
Absolutely.
Yes. And so a habitation is, again, it's the place of dwelling. It's not, it's visiting you here and there. And I think it is, who is it? Is it Albert Einstein, or the one that says that we have to see everything as either there are no miracles or everything is one. And I think that you are always choosing that. And in this case, when you are choosing the miraculous to be more of the norm for, and it's an embodiment, then it's a state of existence. So then you don't really see things as really being miraculous and miracles, because it is just what it is. Miracles seem to take us by surprise and seem to be aha and mind blow us. And it seems like it's something that just occurs, you know, here and there. But when it becomes an embodiment, then it is a habitation, and then that vibration of the impossible, being able to bring the unseemly impossible things to pass in the most divine ways. And so that is going back to what I was saying, the habitation. So let's bring this into a context of everything that has been shared. So the expanded essence of who you are, and that expanded best version and higher version of yourself, has to be a habitation, has to be an embodiment. It has to be not who you're just flowing from here every now and again. It is the very essence and expression of who you are. It is the breath, it is the life that is being lived through you in this very divine way. And so as that's being expressed through you, people around you can see like, wow, there's always these seem to be miraculous things happening. But for you, it is just such an embodiment. It just seems like the normal way of being. Almost, well, doesn't everybody vibrate at this, or shouldn't that be our higher states? But what it does is it invites other people to then partake of that within themselves. So yeah, so again, it is a habitation. I felt that energy coming up, like, no, this is about full embodiment, bringing the evolution of all, and now letting this be the place of dwelling, and you operating from this place, and you are demonstrating the impossible. Doesn't it seem impossible sometimes just to keep your mind right? You know, exactly, right? But then you start finding within this new embodiment, the habitation and the way of being, that you're thinking, you know, the things that may have concerned you at one point don't anymore, because the residency and the consciousness, it almost ties into one of the journals that's, you know, there too, about wellness being a state of mind. And I actually talk about within that wellness being a state of beingness. And so when the impossible energy is, okay, thank you. The impossible energy is a state of beingness, which is in your mind first. Then it gets into the physicality, and that's what you operate from. And that's what habitation beingness is all about, is that the embodiment of this expression now lives through you. And so that's what you want to embrace. And by that right there demonstrates your true connection to source. Going back to the other journal and tying it all, your fresh new start with God, your fresh new start with the connection to life itself is ultimately what plays out in this bigger, grander context of this life embodiment purpose.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
I'd just like to leave people with your closing paragraph. Every day, tell yourself everything, everything, everything. Yes, everything. All things are impossible because I believe. Amen.
Wonderful. Yes, everything. That's right. Everything is impossible for sure, because of that belief factor. Indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, Gina, are you feeling anything else?
I think just trying to. I think the Well of Transformation.
Okay, all right.
An inspirational journal for accessing your inner wellspring of living water.
Okay, so hold that up, if you will. Okay, so we're back to the fluidity. Isn't that interesting that the water element continues to flow as a core theme, in a sense, you know, through this too. And that really is something that's coming up that I need to speak to, is about really being in the river of life of yourself, and being able to really draw from these different streams and reservoirs of your richness, of your reward, of your ways of beingness, and being able ultimately to bring this into the world. So go ahead, Gina.
I'm laughing because the bit that's jumping out is our higher Christ mind invites us to enter into different streams, realms of consciousness.
Oh, wow. I didn't even remember that was there.
To supply and refresh and renew us in order to live the life of our highest design. Again, there's never a need to be thirsty. However, you have to draw and drink from the well of true transformation, which is the living waters. Wow. You can do the impossible when you're consistently connected to the stream of your heart. Wow. That's why I was giggling as you were talking.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was what needed to come out of that one. Thank you.
Oh wow, that just dovetail from the last one, and just the fluidity of it. It's just perfect. Are you feeling anything else? Are you feeling complete? What are you sensing here?
I actually feel we're complete.
Yeah.
Whilst there are others, I think that in terms of this whole flow and theme, these are the ones that needed to be present.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I am sensing is that even the ones that came up that weren't present, the energy of them may be inviting us to do something around those. And not necessarily now, obviously, but be able to come back and maybe, you know, provide another intensive or so with maybe some of the journals that didn't come up, you know, during this time. And so these are just the ones, you know, we obviously would not be able to get to all of them, and nor it's not a need. It's just which ones were speaking and which ones wanted to be present and illuminated, you know, during this time. And I agree with you. I felt the completion. I felt it ended exactly where it needed to in terms of the reading. So Gina, let me ask you this, and just in terms of being able to provide kind of an overall arching theme in terms of something that I can really be present with, to do maybe a little bit more extensive decoding to recode, in a sense, is that we've been talking about expansion, and there's been metamorphosis, there's been evolution, there's acceleration, there's limitlessness, there's a lot around this. Is there an expanded context to this that you would give this kind of a name, or you would just what is the energy of this whole experience? And you can be present with this if you want to feel into what all has happened so far. But I would love to hear what you get a sense of what has been shared.
I think about the evolution of man's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about cavemen and women, early man,
Mm-hmm.
their consciousness was about survival.
Right.
Have I got enough to eat? Will I be eaten? Can I keep warm?
Mm-hmm.
Can I protect myself from marauding clans? And then we go through, and then people believed that the world was flat, and
Mm-hmm.
their consciousness was about very local experience, because travel was so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then the brave new explorers went out and they explored the sea, and they
Mm-hmm.
realized that the
Mm-hmm.
world wasn't flat, that the world was round. And then I can remember being up late at night and watching Yuri Gagarin be the first man to circumnavigate the planet from outer space, and seeing Earth through that lens for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
again, life opened up. And
Mm-hmm.
then people stood on the moon, and they've sent rockets to Mars, and telescopes are demonstrating the universe and universes. We recognize that we are just one of multiple universes, and our
Mm-hmm.
understanding of space and where we fit into that has
Mm-hmm.
expanded. And for me, that provides a great parallel between, that's our understanding, if you like, almost of the physical
Yes.
world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But we are asking people to engage in the spiritual expansion,
Mm-hmm.
to which there is no limit.
Right.
And in being prepared to engage in our own inner journey, because this is a journey where you can do it all from your armchair.
That's right.
It's about doing it from within, and recognizing that we are limitless beings if we allow ourselves to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk a lot about timing and how important it is now, but ultimately, those of you that have been drawn to this, you've been drawn to this for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I would urge you to really focus on that inner, we call it work, and it's interesting, you need to find another word for it, that inner reflection, that inner consciousness, because in doing so, by going within, so we open up the limitless consciousness that is there. And it's there for all of us, but you have to be prepared to allow it. And I would say to you, but what we've offered today, and I find it fascinating how we hadn't prepared today, other than get all the books together.
That's it.
And at the time, how there has been a divine flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I would urge you, if you're listening to this, watching this, go back, choose which journals really resonate with you, and start with those journals, and then allow yourself to we use words like expand, to evolve, to engage, to grow. But you have the opportunity to really accelerate that journey, and you are needed. So please, I urge you to take that decision, that conscious decision, to step into you as a powerful, limitless leader, empath, whichever direction you come from. Ultimately, it's the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, because what's coming up through what you've said, and something you said that was really profound, is about the engagement. And so when people can engage in their evolution and their expansiveness of themselves, that is what ultimately puts them in the deep connection of the river and reservoir of source of who they are. And everything becomes one and the same. One and the same of the connection with source, one and the same of the life purpose and mission, all of it. It is all the life being lived through a source demonstration and ultimate connection. But how do you really discover that? How can you even embody that if there's not the engagement? And so it really, here we go, the call to immersion into the expanded engagement. Okay, the call to immersion within the expanded engagement. So you take from this intensive, and now it's time to immerse more into this divine flow so that the evolution can continue to expand and bring about more of the expansiveness of the higher source connection demonstration of who you are. So you have to engage. This is a new encounter with yourself. So you're engaging this new encounter with who you have become at this moment. So I'm going to invite everybody to take a deep breath on that awareness. So the encounter of this new engagement, how you be with yourself moving forward, how you be with source moving forward, and operating one in the same, and bringing about this continued expansiveness of the demonstration of the evolution that is going to be a continuation. And Gina magnificently provided the perfect analogies in terms of the perception shifts. And when one saw the different theories, the flat earth, round earth theories, and all the different perceptions and the expansiveness that happens in thought, and then understanding. And we talk a lot about this within the works that we do about expanded awareness and next level comprehension, and being able to expand that comprehension so that people ultimately are able to carve out their own path. And that's really customizing, having the customized templates and blueprints that are unique to you, that you discover these higher levels of alignment. So that's what this intensive has really provided in the journal readings and being able to do some life code unlocking, is that you start unlocking these different levels of awareness. And then whenever you're able to examine that which you've written down and you keep going over, you're going to see more of it open up. And those are those codes. And then what you're able to do with that is then, yes, there will be some divine assimilation or piecing it together in a sense in some context. But what you'll find is everything is just kind of an organic flow. As Gina mentioned, just like, and we've mentioned it a couple of times during this intensive, is that here we are just being in the space. And do you see how the trustability of the divine flow and the fluidity just continued? So you have to be able to trust the flow of your life and trust the timing and process of your evolution. Trust the source connection within. Everything is going to flow. We had no idea when this was going to stop, what journal it would stop on, and then yet here's the perfection. And so when you're able to see your entire experience that way, is that you can go from journal to journal, which is your life. Your life is but a journal, in a sense, a living epistle that is always being written, recorded, and expressed in some format. So when you allow that organic flow to take place, you don't need the roadmap. All you need is the space and the experience, the opportunity to expand. And this limitless experience that Source provides for us gives you that opportunity every day to allow the experience to give birth to another experience, to give birth to another experience, and let the current of life take you to the next current, and where you ultimately end up dropping off at a waterfall or entering into a bigger stream or whatever. There is no limitations in Source, as Gina mentioned. And that's the code of life that I would say you need to anchor and embody during this time. That is the totality of the expansiveness of your higher self, the higher divine self, we should say, at this point. That's the evolution to embrace during this time. Gina, would you agree?
Absolutely. Life isn't a spectator sport. You can't look on at this. You have to absolutely embrace it and embody it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be it. I'm always quite surprised that we're called human beings, because most of it should be called human doings. This is very much about at a being level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is about the beingness, because we can only embrace and embody and anchor things at the core of who we are. And that is about the way of beingness. We live, move, and source lives, moves, and has its or his, or however you perceive that beingness through us. And the doingness and the beingness become one, but the beingness has to be the chief. It cannot be the doingness. And when you are present in the power of source, in this now perspective, you are going to be the embodiment of source that is just moving and flowing. And that beingness is really just a state of higher existence or thriving, if you will. It is a continuum of momentum, but it is not just in an act of just being an act within itself and just doing. It is an intentional way of existing. And that is the difference. And that is something that Gina actually, her works in terms of the thriving, not surviving. It is really about being intentional in your existing. We exist, but we're not just existing to exist. There's a reason why we exist, and the intentionality is around living a thriving life. And you can only thrive from source. You can only thrive from being connected to the river of life within yourself and flowing, from that place. And so, Gina, I'm going to share that we will have the links to all of the publications will be in the descriptions, and even the ones that came up or weren't mentioned, well, they were mentioned but not displayed. We'll have those in the description, as well. And then there'll be information to learn about Gina and myself and other works, that we do. But Gina, it has been beyond a privilege and an honor and a total delight for sure to have shared this space with you. And before I close us out or conclude us, is there any other parting words that you would like to share before we conclude?
Just to say to people, thank you very much for joining us, and to say, embrace the opportunity. It's magical, but ultimately you owe it to yourself, and you have so much good that you can do in the world. So do it for you first, but also recognize that by you embodying this, that you have the power to be the leader of leaders and to help so many others. So thank you. It's been a great pleasure and a privilege. And I never cease to be amazed at how the things fit together, even as we go. And we've done this so many times, and yet each time it's a little miracle that the connections are just so strong and so seamless. So thank you very
much. Thank you. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have done several several things together, and this was actually our first kind of journal reading intensive in terms of it being specific about the journals, but it does parallel in the sense to the other experience that we've had in terms of when we have used intentional journals, or just anything that you and I have done together in trainings and everything, is that each time it just is kind of a miraculous experience, and it does never cease to amaze how things just flow. And we can trust our lives, to flow like that. So thank you again, Gina. It's just always great doing this, with you. And so I just want to just say, just in conclusion, and really piggybacking in a sense off of what Gina said, is that, this is really the time to really embrace and embody the expandedness of who you are. This expanded version, this higher context of you, is ready to go far beyond what you could have ever imagined. And as you shift your perception, and really the shift of perception is really just now looking and owning the truth of you and seeing yourself from that higher vantage point, and then ultimately living from that place, and just continue to be present with your life and allow these codes to unlock, and immerse yourself during this time, especially into the intentional journaling process and practice. If you are not doing intentional journaling, I urge you, and I can tell you, Gina definitely champions you to really make this not just a part of your life. Make this the life embodiment experience that you really live by and live from, because it is your very way to track who you are, who you've become, and also be able to examine your source connection, in this way. Being connected to the life force is what it's all about, but not just the life force. It is the new life force that is offered to you in streams, really moment by moment. And so being awake and intentional and present to that. And always remember that your divine destiny isn't found in the stars or in the cards. It is in the life codes. And be blessed.